Hi, everyone. So I first want to thank everyone for coming out today. This is our first kind of back to a little bit of in-person activity, so we're really excited to see everyone. So thank you guys for all attending. We also are streaming this through online for anyone who was not able to attend. So please look forward to everyone on this one. So it's gonna be a little bit still learning how to go through Zoom and going through both and in-person and out-of-person. But our first speaker is presenting for the CSA. They're talking about bittersweet, how the turbulent industry changes have altered a growing candy. I apologize. Let me start over. Bittersweet, how the turbulent industry changes have altered a growing candy market. So today's theme is going to be kind of talking about turbulent industry and candy. So we're going to kind of give a lot of different interactions. There's going to be a lot of different things for you guys to taste throughout the event. The speakers will not be wearing any masks, but if you guys are sitting at your desk or sitting at the table, please wear your mask. But if you guys are eating something, please not. I'm just going to kind of talk about that. So right now, Berger first came here. So everyone sees a little box in front of them. That's going to be, please, hopefully no one ate it yet, but if you're not, we might have a couple extra boxes. So first thing, I just want to say, Berger, thank you so much for presenting at the event. So we have 4 speakers for a Berger team here. So first one is Thomas Lazarita. He's the Senior VP of Business Development at Berger. He has 17 years of experience in the flavor and ingredients specialties. He's going to be actually speaking or presenting remotely, so he will be actually handling the Zoom account. Luke Roddy, he's a Senior Sales Executive at Berger. He has 18 years in the flavor ingredients with various roles. Apologize. So he graduated from the University of Cincinnati in business and communication, and he is an avid Skyline chili fan and connoisseur. So if you guys have a little bit of time afterwards, please definitely talk to him about that, because I just learned about it for the first time today. And then Danielle, she's experienced account manager at Berger. She has over 8 years of industry experience. She has a bachelor's in science and nutrition and food from Montclair State University, and she has been at Berger for 3 years. So I really want to say thank you guys for presenting it, and I will let you guys talk.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Alex, and I'm on the business development team. And as you can see today, we're going to be talking about a bittersweet presentation. So as you see, we have these lovely sweets in front of you. That's the sweet part of our presentation. And as you all know, the markets have been incredibly turbulent recently, with all the different factors from supply chain to weather to labor shortages, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But before we get into that, we actually wanted to give you a little bit on Berger to explain who we are. And I'm going to let Danielle start with that.
Hi, guys. I can barely reach the microphone. So with our vast library of aromatic chemicals sourced globally, we're able to successfully supply across both the flavor and fragrance industries interchangeably, for the most part, depending on product. Berger prides itself on having a very broad repertoire. We have about 3,000 different essential oils and aromatic chemicals within our library. And our main location is in Carteret, New Jersey, which Luke will give you some information about in a few minutes. So our library of natural and synthetic products provide a ton of variety to satisfy consumers' wants and needs, and our marketing team does a really good job at trying to keep up with those trends. So I'm going to let Luke kind of walk you through Berger, who we are and what we do, and the overall structure of the Berger group.
Thanks, Danielle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke, as Alex and Danielle said, and so we're going to walk you through kind of the Berger group, and specifically, I'm going to talk about Berger. So our company, obviously, it's called Berger. We've been in business over 70 years. So founded in 1949, I believe. So I think that's close to 72 years. And so we're 3rd generation family owned, which is pretty neat in today's times. And so we're based, our corporate headquarters is in Carteret, New Jersey. And what we're known for is obviously we're a key supplier and manufacturer of essential oils and aroma chemicals for the flavor and fragrance industry. Our core competencies are really in our inventory. We have over 3,000 various different products stocked at a time and over 200,000 square feet at our corporate headquarters. So that really helps us kind of adjust to our customer needs and really helps with the challenging shipping and timing of a lot of products that everyone is experiencing with today. And so, like I said, we're currently led by Kim and Jillian Blyman that have ran the company throughout the last 70 plus years. Obviously, Kim's uncle started the company. So we're excited to be here today, and I'm going to let Alex talk a little bit about our sister companies, the Whole Earth Group, as well as Berger Tracking.
And just to note, if you're not aware, we do, our main, FOB point per se is Carteret, New Jersey, but we do have warehouses in Itasca, Illinois, for a, easier point if you are in the Illinois, Chicagoland area. And then we also have a warehouse in Los Angeles.
And as Luke said, the Berger Group encompasses more than just Berger. We also have the Whole Herb Company based in Sonoma, California, focusing more on the dry side of the industry, really on the dried spices and botanicals. And then all the way in Bulgaria, we have Berger Tracking, where we cultivate and distill our own rose and lavender oils. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that we are more than just from Bulgaria. We have strategic sourcing partnerships across the entire globe, which allow us to keep our supply lines open and thus keeping your supply lines open as well, as we have all these different origins that we can source from, and that gives us lots of opportunities. And with all that said, there are some issues that we said that we were talking about, and I'll pass it off to Tom, who's back in Carteret, who will get into these issues.
Hello, everyone. You can hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Good now.
I'm sad that I'm not in Chicago with you all. It would have been great, and I really wanted to be there, part of you, but I had a baby about a month ago, so we have a newborn to celebrate at home, so I missed the trip, unfortunately, but I'd love to be there. So to jump right in, it's pretty safe to say that the turbulence we're facing right now is unlike anything any of us have ever experienced. There's supply line issues, labor shortages, weather conditions have all complicated an already complex world. Producers and consumers alike have already had to reevaluate everything that they do, down to the smallest detail. It seems like nothing is sacred these days. However, it's safe to say that it's not all doom and gloom. Necessity is the mother of all invention, much like when the British consumption of black currant was used as an alternative to vitamin C due to an enemy blockade during World War II, or the creation of meatloaf as an extender during a meat shortage. These are similarities that are evident throughout the pandemic and a lot of our circumstances today. Supply shortages and health recommendations continue to remove products from the shelves. People have had to reassess their purchasing decisions as fundamentally shift the way that they live. As a result, consumers are more open to experimentation to replace or even enhance their former routine consumption than ever before. Producers have also felt the effects of a shifting palate and the lack of raw materials. A perfect example would be the current situation around vanillin. To some of us, maybe many of us, this is kind of the elephant in the room, and I just love this picture that I came across. Vanillin has skyrocketed, and it's reached a height that we haven't seen in well over a decade. There's extreme demand combined with unstable production and transportation issues that has suddenly created a situation in which the synthetic and natural are now comparable, or at least narrowing a little bit in their gaps in their price differentials. With material shortages everywhere and the price gap closing between synthetic vanillin and vanillin X-eugenol, it's becoming more and more realistic that X-eugenol might be viewed as an effective replacement during times of heavy market disruption. For some applications, these ingredients are interchangeable in formulation. Of course, with a little bit of massaging, making it an easy step to convert from synthetic to natural. What this ends up doing is it presents a unique opportunity to potentially elevate a product to a natural position or a botanical highlight, which is especially important in a market so concerned with health and naturality. Better for you ingredients were some of the most important trends of 2020 and 2021. Consumers are slashing the consumption of saturated fats and cutting back on sugar while still demanding a really bold and satisfying flavor, which really presents a challenge for a lot of flavorists. To reach this goal, many have turned to Ayurvedic ingredients, and that's been seen by increasing ginger and establishing newer breakthroughs such as turmeric and galangal root. These flavors were once foreign to most Western consumers, but the pandemic has put a spotlight on personal health and physical fitness in a way that really hasn't been observed before. Of course, consumers are willing to try new flavors and ingredients if they think it's going to benefit them in the long run. The process, and in turn, creates a feedback loop in which consumers expand their palates by trying new items, and then it makes them accustomed to stronger and bolder flavors in this instance. These intense flavors are becoming more and more popular with mainstream audiences, and many brands have started to use this to great effect, putting an emphasis behind this idea when marketing their products via fresh or natural ingredients. Another good example of consumer palates expanding is the massive interest in immunity boosting ingredients. Along with ginger, foods such as citrus and garlic have really surged in popularity during this pandemic due to the purported health benefits that are associated with their consumption. The demand for fresh fruits exploded in 2020, and the trend has only continued throughout 2021. Oranges are the major player here. Through anything with high levels of vitamin C, it's fair game for those interested in immunity boosting ingredients. Whether the ingredients themselves increase the level of vitamin C or they just provide a sense of efficacy. A great example of this would be the current situations with orange oil out of Brazil. Prices for sweet orange oil and their derivatives have surged tremendously over the past few months. Many producers are unable to compete with Brazil at an international level. By using alternative ingredients based in unique sourcing locations, such as blood orange out of Sicily that we're going to show you a little later in application, producers can source outside of a common, competitive, and unstable marketing moment and also provide an exotic flavor that ticks all the necessary boxes for a health-conscious consumer. Pricing and instability has become a serious problem for commodity raw materials almost everywhere, and not just in our industry. The potential for slowdown is a constant presence, and many just-in-time purchasing strategies are simply unviable right now without the correct partnerships in place. Cost-sensitive formulations will also struggle to meet their pricing demands in this fluctuating market. However, there are some silver linings for producers to explore ingredients. In some cases, that's through necessity for material substitution, but there is a consumer poised at the other end, ready to explore some of these ingredients at the retail side. All of these trends come together to increase premiumization. By having natural materials available as an alternative source, producers can safeguard themselves against radical changes in the market while also catering to the growing demographic of health-conscious consumers with a newly positioned product. Now we're going to explore some of the ingredients, and I'm going to turn it over to Alex, Daniela, and Luke to see some of these applications in action. And thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Tom. And as you said, we're actually going to get into the boxes now. So after all that bitter news, we're going to get into some sweets. So if you'd like to open your boxes, we're going to work from the top left across, and then we're going to go to the bottom. And Danielle is going to walk you through the ingredients in each and the flavor profile. Luke is going to give you some market information on each, and I'm going to round out each product with the trends. And with that, I'll let Danielle talk about our first topic.
All right, so like the fun stuff now. So as Alex said, so you're going to start in the top left-hand corner and then work your way clockwise. So this is a peppermint white chocolate cookie. It's essentially a vanilla wafer dipped in white chocolate. It's my favorite one out of the whole box, not that anybody cares. These two ingredients that we chose to kind of marry, if you will, for this application was peppermint oil Idaho, as well as WS3. So in terms of flavor of the peppermint Idaho, I find that US peppermint tends to be a lot crispier, super clean. There's a very minty top note, and it has a very unique like cool down at that last bite. So with that combination with the WS3, which is nearly odorless, if you're familiar, it kind of adds like a very nice punch. So those were the two ingredients that we had used. And then I'm going to actually let Luke talk a little bit about the market of both of those products.
Great. All right, so the harvest season for the Idaho peppermint ended in early September. The total harvested acreage was less than the last 3 to 4 years. And this was mainly due to low prices of peppermint oil, as well as decrease in demand, as well as some of the global weather and climate challenges as well. But the WS3 is very nice, how clean and kind of subtle that mint note is when you're consuming.
And if you have any questions like afterwards, you can always like reach out to any of us. If you need any more information for samples, all of the dosages are also available as far as what we use in these specific applications.
And as for trends, so obviously we're getting into the holiday season. You can't go into any store at this point without seeing Christmas stuff already, which is an absolute shame if you ask me. But so as we get into the season, mints are extremely popular, and peppermint being one of the most popular, as well as white chocolate. We are often seeing a pairing of white chocolate and peppermint in so many different applications, especially even now with teas. Teavana recently came out with a white chocolate peppermint tea. And these specialty teas are actually becoming more and more popular, as Tom was saying, with the immunity boosting properties that people are looking for. The demand for black teas has actually lost a lot of traction, while during COVID, these specialty teas really took height and found their immunity boosting properties and their market. So, and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, I always find that peppermint in general, it's always super crispy and refreshing. And this specific peppermint, as well as most other mints in general, it'll give you an intense cooling effect, as if, you know, somebody brushed their teeth or chewed a piece of gum, but in this case, in a much more pleasant way. So,
Do you guys like it?
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
that's a good one. I don't know. I'm partial to it.
It's
So
also-
when they were, we
It's
actually,
his favorite. So, yeah.
that's Kim Lyman's favorite as well. So that's important to note. And just so you guys all know, like, we actually made all of these in our applications lab. So Alex is responsible for the next
Next creation.
prototype. So
His baby.
yeah, this is he's a marketing and sales guy by day and a baker, a chocolatier by night, if you will. So, okay, so the next one next to that on your right is it's a salted almond chocolate. It's a combination of just fresh fine sea salt, which we don't sell at Berger, and natural bitter almond oil, apricot. Bitter almond and benzaldehyde are probably two of my personal favorite raw materials. So this is obviously 98% natural benzaldehyde. It's super strong. I find it to be really clean, with very intense cherry-like top notes. The cool thing I find about any benzaldehyde product or almond oil bitter in general is that I feel like it has the ability to kind of morph into many different types of flavors. I mean, people use it in pistachio applications, and it's also heavily used on the fragrance end as well. So yeah, let us know what you think.
So update on the market info, almond oil is currently pretty stable out there in the industry. Prices haven't changed much considering the times and everything we're going through. And availability is slowly starting to increase. So not too bad for this one.
Yeah, some sweet news for a change. So there's because almond oil is mainly natural benzaldehyde, we often find it in premium cherry or dark cherry beverages. That goes for colas, as well as the new alcoholic market and non-alcoholic seltzer market, which has skyrocketed in the last couple of years. You're seeing almost every seltzer brand now has a cherry derivative of some sort, which is just a new staple. Whereas before, the staple for this product was mainly in chocolates, and you would see any type of chocolate brand normally had an almond chocolate, which again, back to the better for you trend. We were seeing that the almond chocolates, people were trying to get away from their natural Hershey's bar that they always saw. And if it had almond oil, they perceived it as a healthier choice due to the almond actually having fiber, protein, and healthier fats in them. So it's a really better choice.
And Tom, if you want to add anything, you're more than welcome. I don't know if you can do that though. Okay, so next up we have a Mexican chocolate dipped pretzel. So we actually have combined two more specific raw materials. The first is vanillin butyl ether. This is a fairly new material for Berger. It is synthetic, but we're really excited to start kind of promoting this product. It's very unique. Obviously, it's kind of in the vanillin family, which is tough times right now. So my thoughts on this, and there's also cinnamon bark oil in this application as well, that I will get into. But the vanillin butyl ether kind of gives us, we've discussed this amongst ourselves too, it like kind of gives a smoky, like campfire flavor. It's super unique. You know, it's definitely used alongside certain ingredients like cinnamon, but it's very fruity, super spicy, with a likeness to vanilla. And I guess that's actually the best way that you would describe this specific raw material.
It can pair nicely with a lot of other things as well.
Yeah. And then the second addition is cinnamon bark oil. And that's added at 90 ppm. So cinnamon bark is, you know, considered true cinnamon. It's often mistaken with cassia, but it's used constantly in baked goods, beverages, and the ingredients' antiseptic properties also make it very popular in oral care applications. But it kind of is, it's just warm, it's dry. There's a lot of woody top notes, extremely high in cinnamic aldehyde content at like 90%. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this one.
All right, so the market info and the update, considering kind of the family of vanillin, vanillin butyl ether is actually quite stable right now. This is a new material for Berger that we just took on, and so the availability is pretty good. So if any samples are needed, please let us know around that. Cinnamon bark oil, it's also a pretty solid product right now as well. Pricing is stable and availability is quite easy and strong too. So let us know if there's any samples needed with that.
And some trend information on this one. So when we created this, we wanted to create something a little sweet and a little spicy, which we're seeing a change in consumer profile with. And this is an excellent example of this, because we're seeing in the American market specifically, we're seeing the Doritos sweet and spicy chicken from Buffalo Wild Wings, and then the notorious now Starbucks apple mocha, which I personally have never tried. But cinnamon bark holds a lot of popularity in this area, mainly because it's so traditionally known for having this sweet and spicy note. And it's for flavor pioneers looking to get into this area, it's a great place to start because it's so classic. This one also has a use in alcoholic beverages, mainly in whiskeys and bourbons, where these were traditionally harsher tasting alcohols. Adding the cinnamon really cuts that edge and opens up to a wider market and allows for a lot more people, especially college kids, to get into it. And we're also finding a lot of desserts, especially getting in, like I said, to this time of year, the fall time. You're finding your cinnamon, your ciders, your different types of donuts and everything. All these sweet and savory items are really coming into fruition again, as they do every year. And then we're going to move on to our next item.
We had to throw, you know, the fall pumpkin muffin into the box. So the next is a pumpkin muffin bite. So this specific application, we decided to use organic nutmeg oil, which is actually directly in the cake itself. And then interestingly enough, we used galangal root oil in the icing. So I'm actually gonna let you try that and then I'll start describing.
It's probably the most unique one, I feel like, out of all of them you're gonna taste.
So what do you guys, do you taste the nutmeg first or the galangal?
I taste the galangal by itself.
So the galangal gives, you know, the icing in this application just a very spicy, sweet kind of note. Super fresh, very camphoraceous, with a rich and really spicy tenacity. So, you know, it kind of, it does retain the cineal like nuances, but it's warm and kind of friendlier on the come down. And then we'll go to nutmeg. And this is organic certified nutmeg oil that is in this specific muffin. So with the nutmeg in general, this is also very warm and spicy. Strong combo of sweet and peppery notes. So, and as time goes on, the odor shifts to become woody and a little bit more balsamic. And I almost said tainted, but that's not the right word. But we thought that, you know, the combination of these two specific essential oils would be kind of eclectic and interesting. So I'm gonna let Luke talk a little bit about the market info on both of those. Yep.
All right, so nutmeg, we observed a fair amount of turbulence in April of this past year, mainly due to the combination of bad weather and poor crop cycles that have happened, specifically yields. Due to the high demands in the dried spice market, the majority of the nutmeg production goes towards dried material rather than distillation. Availability of fresh nutmeg is limited, and prices of nutmeg oil firmed out pretty much where we're at right now, though both the oil and the dried spice remain just as popular as ever out there in the industry.
Galang is a relatively interesting product for me because it's not something that I really knew too much about before getting into this industry. But it is a major component of what we're seeing now is detox culture, which is one of those COVID trends that we saw come around, where people are looking for these healthy alternatives, trying to switch out of their sugary snacks that they're going for. And Galang is a great alternative for that. It is such a bold flavor that it kind of overwhelms your taste buds and gets you away from that urge to go for that ultra sugary snack. As we said a little bit earlier with like ginger and some other products as well. And then it's got this strong exotic flavor, which we're seeing more now with the more experimental consumer coming out of COVID, especially with supply lines having issues and products coming off of shelves that we talked about. People are looking for alternatives. And this is one of the great alternatives that we're seeing now. Nutmeg has been a staple. It's a staple spice that we've been seeing for a long time, whether it's in your Jamaican jerk chicken or your 5-spice stir fry. It's been around for a while and is more of a exotic, but also domestic flavor as well, because one of the biggest ways that we saw it was in the everything but the bagel seasoning from Whole Foods a couple of years ago in 2020. And that was incredibly popular, which is, again, domestic flavor. So, and moving on.
And I believe that the next treat is the last one in the box. And this is an orange meringue cookie. So we decided to not go with traditional orange oil. We decided to move into a different space and use blood orange. So this is added into the meringue cookie at 380 ppm. So, you know, blood orange is super sweet. It's tart, it's aldehydic, very fruity. There's a pulpy tinge that, you know, is really popular in certain premium citrus products. It kind of puts us like a sort of exotic twist on and it changes it up in terms of using orange, because orange is so widely used, and we've been seeing a lot of products out on the market that Alex is going to talk about that have been utilizing blood orange. So yeah, I mean, I hope that you enjoy it, and I'm gonna let Luke talk a little bit about the market.
Kind of true to fruit, kind of that fresh impact citrus note that you get when you're testing it as well. So the market info on blood orange oil, unlike the majority of orange oils, blood orange is derived exclusively from the Italian material. It's going to be cold pressed in Sicily, and the market for the blood oranges, it's extremely active right now. However, unlike general citrus oils, blood orange can be found in a number of new trending products, which Alex is going to talk about here as well. It's really too early in the season right now to get a clear forecast on what the harvest season is going to look like. The general consensus is that the fruit volume will be reduced compared to what it was last year and the year before. Some of the extreme heat waves that struck in Italy in August this year brought temperatures upwards to 48.8 degrees Celsius. So that's close to 120 Fahrenheit. And so in that region in Sicily, it contributed significantly to a lot of fruit loss, climate conditions that are extremely crucial in the success of the crop growing, which didn't happen obviously due to these extreme conditions. The next crop is likely to be delayed at least 2 to 3 weeks going forward.
And for the trends on this, I'm sure you've heard plenty about blood orange recently. It's been popping up everywhere, from White Claw using it in their new Surge seltzer, which has a higher alcohol by volume. So they're using it to kind of enact or kind of counteract that flavor in a way. It's hugely popular in almost every form of media at this point. It's one of those new hot keywords that we're always hearing. And the reason we used it in this application specifically is because meringue is so sweet and this orange gives a nice tart feel to it. So we really want to switch it up a little bit. So, yeah, thank you so much. And I believe that will be the end of the Birthday Bakery. Oh yeah. So if you like samples, please go to bergerinc.com/trade-show. And we have a form where if you'd like to sample any of the materials, we have to get those out to you. Or if you have any questions, please see me or with my
You can ask now.
Yeah.
Please, comes to mind.
Is the blood orange crop being affected by HLB citrus beating or not?
Tom might know.
that would be a Tom question.
Yeah.
So Tom, is this blood orange crop being affected by greening?
Not in an alarming way. It may be present, but it's not crossing across the magnitude that we're seeing in some of the more troublesome areas. So at the moment, it's a non-impact item. It's knowing how greening is going. It could happen at any time, unfortunately, but right now we're okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Like literally what it sounds like, yeah. You didn't crack that code.
No.
I got it in there. Unless anyone has any other questions, we'll let the next speaker.
So we're going to be passing out a couple more stuff for our next speaker, and I will pass that around. Everyone gets a little goodie bag.
I didn't remember if you said if you had
Well, we'll go on to our next speaker.
Oh, yeah. We've got a couple different bases now, and it's trying to find we've got the house about 25 milligrams.
Hi, everyone. Try to move it up a little bit. Please go here a little bit.
Yeah.
There it is. Hello, can you hear me in the back? Is that better? Okay. I heard a couple people said that they couldn't hear that well in the back. So our next speaker is Bill Puglia. He's the president of FCI Flavors. He's going to be talking about let's just make sure I say it exactly correct, the functional delivery system and challenges in flavors delivery and confectionery. So he has 35 years of experience in the food industry. He comes from his first 12 years working at Nabisco, Willy Wonka, and third one was, I apologize, Nestle. And he's worked his first 12 years in the confectionery industry before starting FCI Flavors. So please welcome our first speaker.
Thank you, Justin. That's going to be a tough act to follow, so don't have any high expectations. We've provided some goodie bags. Some of it's going to be relevant to what I'm going to talk about today. So I encourage you to peruse and partake in that bag. It will make my presentation be much better. Thanks for the opportunity. I see some very familiar faces and some new faces. Yes, I've been in the food industry for over 35 years. What does that mean? Well, number one, it means I'm old. Number two, it means that, I've seen a couple things here and there. And, this is a pretty exciting time in our country and in the world, and particularly in the food industry. So it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to talk about something fun like candy and using candy as a delivery vehicle for nutrients and I just call them active ingredients. I mean, there are so many right now and we'll go through, some of those. I've had the opportunity to be involved in many different types of projects over the years, whether it's beverage, bakery, but particularly candy. Those are the most fun. Well, I'm sorry, alcoholic beverages are the most fun, but that's usually, the active ingredient there is quite obvious. So, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about why candy is such a great vehicle for delivering active ingredients and some of the challenges that are created from a flavoring standpoint in using candy as best it can be to overcome, flavor challenges that are brought on by some of these active ingredients. Not working hard. As you can tell, IT is not my thing. Okay. Okay. So why candy? Well, that seems like a pretty obvious answer, right? But just to go through a few aspects of why candy is so appealing. First of all, it's delicious. Raise of hands, who doesn't like candy in some way, shape, or form? Anybody you know? Okay. It's delicious. It is. It's fun. It's colorful. It can be colorful. So you have the opportunity there to really tweak a lot of the senses, right? To convince people that what you're giving them is going to be not only good for them, but it's also going to taste good. It's familiar. Again, everybody knows candy. Everybody likes candy. You may like chocolate more than you like jelly beans, or you might like sweet tarts more than you like Snickers bars. It doesn't really matter. I can guarantee that whatever you like, there is already a candy out there, or candy is already being used as a delivery vehicle for some kind of active ingredient. It's fun. Kids love candy. Adults love candy. And it's something that's ingrained deep in our minds and in our psyches. At some points, it's our personality. It's versatile. It's versatile in the fact that it could be used. There are many different product forms, and it can be used to deliver color, flavor, all kinds of other things, and it's easy to work with in most cases. Now, we'll get into some of those challenges later on. It's economical, and when I say economical, I mean we're basically talking about a group of ingredients that are plentiful. The presentation before us talked about some of the ingredient challenges that we're seeing today. And of course, the candy industry or candy in general is certainly not immune from those. But the versatility in the different product forms and the way candy's made and the availability of having the product made either on a contract basis or making it yourself. Economical and sweet. Sweetness cannot be overlooked or overstated in its ability to mask some of the off flavors that are associated with some of these active ingredients. So just a little quick history on candy and its use as a delivery vehicle for active ingredients. Going way back, I mean, candy has been used for over a century to deliver nutrients and other active ingredients. Going back to botanical extracts, everyone's familiar with cough drops. They've been around for a long time. Using them to add flavor. Some of the botanical extracts that we use every day in the flavor industry, right, have been around for many, many years. And not only are they used for flavoring, but they also have some kind of a benefit, particularly like going way back into cough drops and things like that, hard candies and chocolates or forms of chocolate. It's functional, flavorful, and again, the cough lozenges and the throat lozenges. When I say lozenge, I'll get into that a little bit later. I'm not talking so much about hard candy as I am talking about other lozenge forms. There's a good example. 2, 3 actually brands that have been around forever and used to deliver, soothing, even some kind of anesthetic to the throat. Okay, product forms. These are just certainly not all of them, but these are the main ones. And as I go through some of these, you'll see what is available in the marketplace will look familiar to you. Probably the most popular form of confectionery used as a delivery vehicle today is gummies/jellies. So any kind of a molded sugar piece that's soft. There's literally gummy everything today. You walk into any store, whether it's a convenience store or a vitamin store or a mass merchandiser, there's going to be gummy form of something. And not just candy. And then jellies, that extends into, it's kind of like a little blurry gray area there between gummies and jellies. Jellies are generally, people look like fruit snacks and things like that are a jelly form. Hard candy, obviously. When it comes to cough drops, like we talked about, lollipops, anything that, is long lasting. And again, those are used because it's, they're usually high in sugar and sweeteners, right? So it has a soothing effect, a coating effect, and it could be easy to mask some of these off flavors that are being introduced by the active ingredients. Soft chews and caramels, going way back to delivering calcium. I don't know if anybody remembers the product Biactive. I think it's still on the market. It was one of the first calcium supplements that was mass marketed. So that one was very popular. So that also, falls into the line of fudges and things of that nature. So they have usually a higher fat content. And as we will see, and you guys already know, when it comes to masking some of these notes, fat is your friend. Tablets and lozenges. Let's see what else do we have here. Chewing gum. That is becoming more and more popular as a vehicle. It's a little bit harder because some of these active ingredients, like for instance, these energy gums that are out there now, a lot of caffeine, taurine, a lot of bitter tasting products. The sugar or the sweetener system is gone long before the effect of that bitterness. So that's one that's still a work in process, but a lot of people are working with. Chocolate, obviously, again, very high fat system. It's very appealing to a lot of people, to a broad base of people. And we'll see some examples of how chocolate is used. My favorite one, and again, one that everyone is familiar with today, is bars. And I just put combo in there because there are so many forms of bars on the market today. I remember going, this is where the age thing comes, going back to the late 80s and early 90s when protein bars first started to come out. That bar was a very fitting name because most of them were about as hard as an iron bar. And we used to call it the sticks and twigs group. Remember that, Leslie?
Yeah.
So they put together this powder and say, make it taste like chocolate fudge or creme brulee. And it's like, well, wait a minute, this is sawdust. But where do we even start? So, but now you see, I mean, so there's layers of bar. There's some of these that have 7 or 8 layers of different flavors and textures. And so they incorporate a lot of these different product forms. There's caramels, there's nougats, there's baked goods, there's inclusions, there's crunchy bits, there's you name it, and they're putting it in the bar, which is a good thing because now in those types of products, you have the opportunity to introduce a lot of these active ingredients and a lot of different flavors and textures, which actually add to the overall eating experience. So now we're going to talk about some of the categories, we'll say, of what's being used in candy today, or candy is being, I have to make that distinction. Candy is being used, again, to deliver these active ingredients. Energy is a huge category today, right? It's not just in powders, in beverages, but candy is becoming a very big vehicle. They're challenged with trying to cram as much of these active ingredients, for instance, caffeine, taurine, into these smaller bits of candy. But they're having some very good success. Caffeine, as we all know, is kind of bitter. Okay, so being able to use caffeine effectively and not have it taste objectionable can take some doing from a flavor standpoint. Sweetness is definitely a huge benefit there. So that's why when you're looking at gums and things like the chewing gums and things of that nature, having some kind of an extended sweetness profile is very beneficial in masking that back of the throat bitterness. Taurine, again, like caffeine, is very, very bitter, but also very effective when it comes to supplying energy and focus. At least that's what they're marketing it as. And again, anytime you have a chance to incorporate some kind of a fat in there, it's going to help, especially in the back of the throat coating. BCAAs, the branched chain aminos, a lot of that is in pre-workouts. I've seen recently, aside from beverages and beverage mixes, there are a lot of pre-workout candies and gums out there. And they're really starting to gain some traction in the marketplace. So again, there's the challenge with that. Theanine is kind of like a savory, almost an umami kind of an effect, right? So that is introducing that into a candy can be a little bit challenging. So sweetness, any kind of mouth coating, and usually when we're talking about introducing these energy / focus ingredients, it's not going to be in a chocolate or something like that. It's going to be something that's going to be a little bit more portable, not as susceptible to heat and things like that, because people are putting them in their gym bags and they're keeping them in their cars and wherever else they store them and tote them around. The Bacopa is one that's you'll see it in a couple of these products here. Bitter, slightly sweet, and it has kind of a cooling effect, which again could be beneficial, depending on the product form and the flavor you're trying to deliver. Okay, so now we come to this whole category of sport, muscle, endurance. Everyone's familiar with whey protein powders, or protein powders in general. You have whey protein in the form of concentrate, isolate, hydrolysate. The more processed the whey protein is, or proteins in general, but whey protein, the more bitterness you're going to have. I mean, if you've worked with whey protein hydrolysates, you know it could be a real nightmare as far as flavoring goes. Soy protein, a little bit more benign. It has kind of maybe like a slightly woody or beany taste. Soy protein has been around for a long time. It's used in a lot. Actually, when we first started doing bars back then, it was mainly soy protein because of the flavor or the mildness of the flavor. And then, they started to be able to refine some of these whey products and got them tasting a little bit better. Of late, pea protein, that's another one that's a gargantuan challenge from a flavor standpoint. Pea proteins are bitter, beany, very strong. You're looking at they're trying to overcome that with kind of like brown flavors, chocolates, coffee, caramel, things like that. That's probably the best way to do it. Rice protein is gaining a lot more popularity now too. And these all, I'm not going to get into why these different proteins are being used, but functionally they're making, different claims all over the place. Potato protein, that was one that I was kind of interested in. That's a pretty easy one. I mean, we haven't really seen too much of a challenge when it comes to flavoring potato protein products. Egg protein. Now there's one. That's an interesting one. Depending on the level of refinement, it could be anywhere from sulfury to eggy, right? It can be very aromatic, which is another challenge. All right, another area that is very popular is inflammation. I mean, there's reams and reams of research that's coming out now that basically just about any malady that the human faces today is caused by inflammation in some way, shape, or form. So addressing inflammation is certainly something that is on the mind of not only product developers and marketers, but also scientists in general. The Berger folks talk a little bit about ginger, which is, something that is used in a lot of inflammation products. Turmeric and curcumin, which are, again, on the savory type side. So that's kind of hard to, when you're talking about a sweet application to overcome. Echinacea, it's pretty versatile. It's used in a lot of different products. And it's immune boosting also, and it also has kind of a numbing effect, or it can. Bromelain is slightly fruity, greeny, and again, the sources of these materials really determine, how these products taste in a finished product. Omega-3 fatty acids are fishy. We all know that. So using something that's, we found that when you're dealing with, omega-3 fatty acids and compounds in that group, high aroma is really something that helps to get past that taste. Vitamin E, not a big deal. Here's the big one, CBD. Everybody's using CBD in drinks, candies, bakery goods, and I'm talking about consumable stuff, right? So, and that one, I'm sure everyone here has probably worked with CBD by now in some way, shape, or form, and the challenges there are, again, depending on the level of refinement, it's grassy, it's weedy, it's herbal, it's very strong, it's very fragrant. So overcoming those challenges is quite interesting. Immune support. With the pandemic, this is something that is really top of mind for many, many people today. So lots of products are coming onto the market, in addition to the ones that are out there now. that contain a lot of these active ingredients, zinc probably being the number one. I mean, going back to when was it? Probably the early to mid 90s is when cold E's first came out. And, you know, everyone was eating cold E's and eating cold E's, you know, and it was like, okay, it was slightly palatable, but it was more for the effect than it was for the taste. That product and many others have come a long way when it comes to not only their functionality, but also in the way they taste. B vitamins. We've all worked with B vitamins. And, you know, depending on which vitamins are most prolific in those blends, they could be metallic, to some of them have a burning sensation. So that's a pretty interesting one, but just about every product is going to have some sort of B vitamin in them. So, and again, I'm just lumping them into one group. I know there are, you know, many of them, B12 being one that's pretty prominent. D3, which is another one that's making its way into just about every product on the market these days. Not quite as problematic in smaller doses, but as the doses get higher, you're going to be challenged with, you know, some of the, again, it's kind of almost like a metallic flavor. Magnesium is kind of more of a textural thing. You know, it's chalky, and chalkiness really does a lot of things with flavor in the mouth, right? I mean, it doesn't supply a smooth delivery of flavor, so that can be a challenge too. Here's one that we're working on a lot lately, and that's grapefruit seed extract. Lots of information coming out on the health benefits of this particular item, and it's kind of on the bitter side. Well, it's really on the bitter side. It's very strong, but it's supposed to be very, very effective when it comes to supporting the immune system. Elderberry extract, another one that's used in immune products, but it's used in probably a dozen other types or categories of flavors too. Not quite as objectionable. It's kind of slightly bitter, tart, and fruity, again, depending on the level of refinement. And L-glutamine, which has been around for a long time, but it's, you know, used a lot in these types of products. It's sulfury, it's eggy, it's salty, sometimes meaty. So the next area is gut health. Gut health is something that's becoming more and more important, at least in the mainstream today, because everyone's heard about, you know, all of your health starts in your gut. You know, if you don't have a healthy gut, you're going to have problems. The number one material there being fibers, you know, insoluble or soluble. We call them flavor eaters, because depending on the level of fiber and the source, it just holds flavor. It doesn't release. So you got to sometimes whack it over the head with some flavor, which we don't mind doing, right? Prebiotics and probiotics, you know, they're usually not too much. There's more shelf-stable products coming out in this stable of groups, but mainly refrigeration is sometimes required unless they can stabilize those bacteria. Magnesium again is a more of a it's a texture thing. Chalky. If it's from citrate, it's slightly sweet and fruity, and that works a little bit better in a candy application. Kombucha. Hate that word. But that's, again, is becoming a lot more popular in some of these health products. Depending on the source, it could be sweet, sour, bitter, herbal. And, you know, again, it keeps progressing as to the suppliers of these products, you know, how refined they're making their process and the products. And there's L-glutamine again. Sleep aids, melatonin, which has been around forever. It's not really that big of a flavor challenge, but again, depending on the dosage you're trying to deliver. Valerian root, which we all know as flavor people, right? It's not only a flavor component, it's also a functional ingredient. GABA, slightly bitter, and you see this overriding theme of bitter, 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 right? Tryptophan, again, been around forever. Calcium, it's a chalky thing. Magnesium, bergamot, again, something we use in the flavor industry a lot, but also has some medicinal effect. And another one that's becoming more popular right now is passion plum. It's slightly floral, slightly minty, depending on the level of refinement and the level that you're using it. All right. Brain and cognitive. How many people see, if you watch television for more than 10 minutes a day, you're going to see 10 commercials on brain supplements, right? Which is, again, as we age as a population, is important, right? And who doesn't want to be sharp-minded? Ashwagandha is one that's very, very popular right now. It's bitter, it's earthy, it's very pungent. Cytoline, that's one that's been around for a while, but is now starting to get a little bit more press when it comes to brain function. I haven't personally done much work with that yet, so I'm not quite sure, how to overcome that. But Copa Cabana, that is another one that's becoming very, very popular today in brain supplements. Ginkgo, been around forever. We spelled it wrong. It's herbal, it's astringent, it's woody, it's green, but it's also very effective when it comes to cognitive health. DMAE is a nootropic. It's bitter, and it also has a slightly metallic taste. Creatine, I bet we've all worked with creatine, right? Salty and bitter. And this is a new one on me, acetyl L-carnitine, which is sour, fishy, and metallic all at the same time. Aren't we lucky? Just another slide on some of the, that's a very popular brand of many different supplements. So flavor challenges, getting back to that, or getting to that. So bitterness, what we normally do is we're looking for extended release flavors, layered flavor systems. I usually like to use an example of doing a combination of a liquid flavor and follow it up with an encapsulated flavor. That gives you that layering effect where the liquid is going to express itself first, when you're eating the product, and then the encapsulation will hopefully assist with the back end, whatever those, particularly when it comes to the bitterness is just, it's a tough one. It's a dragon that needs to be slain every day. Every product has got a different mode of operation there. So salts and fats help. As I said, fat is our friend. When it comes to bitterness, fat is definitely our friend. Metallic flavors. Using sweet is always easier to overcome the metallic flavors. Fruity flavors are very, very effective with metallic flavors. You start getting into some of the darker flavors like vanillas or caramels and things like that, it's going to be a much harder battle there. Fishy, we talked about the omega-3s. This is really, I can't overstate the fact that we have found that high aromatic flavors really help in masking fishiness. Don't know how it works, but that's how it works. And I'm sure that the people who are into the taste science thing can help explain that. But when you get into like some of the high aroma flavor or components, like methylantranolate, benzaldehyde, things like that, that are really going to be up front. Fruitiness helps with this fishiness for sure, and strong flavors. But I cannot overemphasize the aromatic portion. P and B, there are several components I talked about earlier that contribute to that. These generally work better with dark flavors. like the vanillas, the chocolates, the coffees, the toffees, that are, not fruity, not even in the middle. So the darker flavors definitely work with the pea proteins. I mean, you don't see too many fruity flavored pea protein products out there. They're usually now there are strawberries and other things that, but they're usually backed up with vanilla or some kind of a cream note that's going to help with the bean portion. Astringency. Trying to cover up astringency is something that it's usually acidic type flavors, citrus, and salt really helps with astringency. I know for some of you that doesn't really compute because they might emphasize each other, but it really does help getting the levels correct is, also, so sodium in other words. The woody, herbal, salty, fat, again, berry, St. John's bread and fenugreek and chicory. So the herbal extracts that we use on a regular basis are going to be helpful in this. So, is that candy? Not quite, but it says candy on the top almost, doesn't it? So I just saw that and I thought that this is an interesting take on or an example of what direction this group of products, known as supplements or whatever you want to call them, is going. It really amazed me that a company like Mars really allowed their brand to be used on something like that. But that's another subject for another day. But you see more and more of that. Some of the larger companies who would never ever consider doing any kind of co-branding or licensing of their brands are doing it more and more every day. So that's a great opportunity for us because you're taking that brand and extending it into a completely different category. And that's where the familiarity comes from. You see Starburst and you have an expectation of what that product is. It's at least going to drive trial, right? It may not drive, the product has to perform to drive repeat sales, right? That's always the case. But in order to get someone to pick that up, that's pretty darn effective, I think. So I'm going to wrap it up just by saying, we talked about, candy being a great vehicle for delivering active ingredients. We talked about some product forms. We talked about some targeted uses, active ingredients, and the flavor challenges associated with them. It's been my pleasure addressing this group, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time. Nobody? Yes, Dana. Thank you for bailing me out.
Yeah, well, this is my silly, but I don't know what coca is, and I was going to Google it, but I would love to hear you tell it.
You would like me? You want me to sing? What? I can't hear you all the way back.
That's exactly what I said. You have a beautiful voice.
Thank you. I am not familiar with it. I don't have any firsthand experience with it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's not the first time this happened, even today. So anyway, I would like to be, make myself available to answer any questions you might have in private. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, you said strong flavors to go over fishy notes. Is that more like grape flavors, or where do you see better ones working better in the fish?
With fishy notes, again, high aromatics, and yes, fruit flavors are very, very effective when it comes to the fishy notes. I've not seen many times where other flavors like, again, caramels and toffees and things like that work. Now, fishy notes, obviously, if you're not talking about candy, there's a lot of other ingredients you can use, from a flavor standpoint to mask it. But very strong, high aromatic, fruity flavors, particularly the citrus family, will help with that in a great amount. Yes, Leslie. All my friends are asking me questions. I love this.
Could you address a couple of minutes of what you feel the role of flavor modulators might be in overcoming some of these bad descriptors You might-
Sure. I mean, I'll give you what I know, which, you know, again, isn't that much. Flavor modulators, that's one of those terms that, what is it? I mean, so there's lots of people out there that are pushing flavor modulators. You know, most of the ones that I've seen that are successful are the ones that are sweetness modulators. They help to because of their mouthfeel and mouth coating effect, they have a great chance or a better chance of helping to overcome. Because think about it, bitterness is what we're really talking about for the most part. I mean, everyone has a challenge with bitterness, and bitterness is sensed back of the tongue, back of the throat, right? So, I mean, again, I'm not a taste scientist, so I'm not even gonna go there. But so anything that we can do to help to either block those cells, right? Or to coat them so that they're not picking up or sensing some of the, you know, like for instance, bitterness. So again, that's pretty much. Is there anything in specific that I can answer, Les? No? Okay. Yes, sir.
Could you explain a little bit more about that, using combination of liquid and encapsulated flavor for masking bitterness?
Oh, sure.
Very interesting. The first time I'm hearing.
I didn't hear the last part.
First time he's hearing it.
First time hearing
Oh.
about using combination.
Okay. So when you look at flavor as a functional ingredient itself, right? How it functions in a product, and you know how you sense it, right? Depending again on the product type, right, and the carrier system. But my experience has been when you're using a layered approach to delivering flavor, you have a liquid phase, I'll call it, right, that is going to be sensed and broken down by saliva quick. So you're going to, whatever flavor is going to be released in the beginning is there, right? But if you have some kind of an encapsulated form of flavor, and I'm not even going to start talking about that because everyone has their own methods and opinions on encapsulation. But fat encapsulation, very helpful in some cases. Some people use starches and gums, combinations or by themselves, right? Using gum arabic as an encapsulating agent. The gum is not going to be dissolved. Now you're going to break some of those capsules, obviously through chewing, mastication, right? It's going to break some of those capsules. But most of them are not going to be released until later on, right? In the actual consumption or in the chew of the product. So the concept there is giving a pleasant and identifiable flavor immediately, and then having some kind of a delayed release, I even hate to use that term, but a longer release flavor system in there that's going to, again, do what I just said, delay that release of the flavor so that it's going to come later and it's going to have, you know, kind of a 1-2 punch when it comes to whatever the bad actor is. Does that make sense? Greg?
So I have a follow-up to that. So with the liquid flavor, have you found that, and maybe it's based on the system, that you have performance difference either more towards water soluble or oil soluble? And if there is a performance difference, which carriers do you think work better?
Well, again, it depends on the product form, right? So let's talk about a gummy bear or something like that. You smell a bag of gummy bears and it doesn't smell like any one flavor. It smells like a bag of gummy bears, right? So you've already got some aromatics work, right? So when you're consuming the product, right, you get that release. And gelatin is a good example because gelatin will hold, it won't suck it up like fibers for the most part, but it will hold it, right? So once you start putting the product in your mouth, you've got the sugars melting or whatever, you know, it could be a sugar. So the gelatin's starting to soften, right? Because of the heat of your mouth, it's releasing some flavor there. And you're also starting to release it, you know, through the chewing process, right? So you've got that up front. But then if you had again, something that was more back-end loaded, like an encapsulated flavor. But so in that format, you know, you're probably looking at, and again, it's very basic stuff. PG, we found in working with gummies and jellies, that if the process by which it's made allows, using a carrier like an MCT or something like that is going to give you even more, because even just a little bit of that extra fat is going to help a lot. So if you're using a flavor at a low level, let's say, you know, 0.2%, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if that's 80% carrier, now you've got a pretty nice slug of fat that's moving around, right? Or that's going to be available to coat. And then you add that with, so in that particular application, I would lean toward more a fat-based system. Now, I know the propylene glycol is, you know, obviously the go-to for a lot of water-soluble liquid systems in our industry, right? But in my experience in actually making candy, it really depends on your process, right? Whether you need a water-soluble system or whether you need an oil-soluble, or can tolerate an oil-soluble system. A lot of times when they're making deposited candies, which is what a gummy bear is, they mix the living daylights out of it while it's going through the process, but then they put it in a hopper to deposit. And it's usually viscous enough to hold, right? The viscosity is there to hold whatever flavor. So you've taken that flavor and you've made a homogeneous, I don't want to say solution, but suspension of it, right? So you've got these flavor molecules all over the place. But if there's no agitation in your depositor and you're holding it at a higher temperature, there's a possibility that the flavor can separate out. So it's kind of knowing the process is really going to help. So that's why people think we're a pain in the butt when we first start dealing with them sometimes, is we're asking a lot of questions. So we're asking the questions because we have a little bit of a working knowledge of, you know, what they're trying to do. But each process is a little bit different at each manufacturer. So getting that information is very crucial. Knowing to do with that information is another thing altogether. So hopefully you have some people on your staff that you know, can help with that. If not, I'm always available for questions. I mean, this is a friendly business for the most part, and I help people out. One of the biggest services we provide as a company is, we may not have the answer, but we know who does. Okay, so we put a lot of people together. We may never make that sale, but that's okay. They're going to come back to us later on because they're going to remember that we helped them out. Does that help at all, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. I think there might be some extra goodie bags back there. Go help yourself.
So let's see if we can put next speaker.
Right there. I actually really don't care. No, I haven't. I almost thought about that. So we're going to start with our next presenter, please. Everyone sit down. Can everyone look? Does everyone have one of these by chance? Okay, we're going to start with our next speaker. So if everyone quiet down, please. Thank you, everyone. So our next speaker, Valentina Parma, she's the Assistant Director at the Monell Center. Her topic is going to be COVID-19, a spotlight on the chemical senses. She is a global expert in understanding the chemosensory consequences of COVID-19. She's also the founder and leader of the global consortium of the chemosensory research, which was established in response to this pandemic. Please welcome her.
You're on mute, Valentina.
All right, now you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so here we go. Thank you very much for the introduction. Like, I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you tonight. And as has been said, I'm going to focus tonight on COVID-19 and on how this COVID-19 pandemic really brought a spotlight on the chemical senses. And we may already know, like as chemosensory enthusiasts and like people really close to smell and taste, that both these senses are particularly relevant for health. And just to give you like a very, very quick, idea of what I mean by that, if we think about smell loss, we can see that as being a symptom in Alzheimer's disease, in Parkinson's disease, and it's even one of these prodromic symptoms that happens like up to 10 years prior, like the development of motor symptoms, for instance. It's part of dementia. It's of course a smell loss. It's a significant part of post-viral smell syndrome, toxin exposure, chemotherapy treatment, and traumatic brain injury. So you can see just by this very quick set of list of neurological conditions and general health conditions that we actually have a lot of situations in which a smell loss is informative or is one of the symptoms of this condition. Rarer, though still present, is the possibility of having taste loss or complete taste loss, which is pervasive, for instance, in people who experience chemotherapy treatment. And if, we imagine life without these senses, I think perhaps for us, it's a little bit easier to understand what that may mean, but people that have significant smell and taste loss tend to report lower quality of life in general, greater anxiety and depression symptoms, but also nutritional problems with that span from becoming underweight to overweight, and a lot of, general dietary quality issues. And so as we can see, there are many domains of our life in which smell and taste play a significant role, and the lack of these senses or their dysfunction really critically contributes to our well-being. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea right off the bat of what happens with people in COVID-19 with respect to smell and taste dysfunction. And I just want to set the stage for the magnitude of the problem that we're facing. So this is a graph that comes from data that we collected with the GCCR, and I will explain in a few slides what that entity is and what we have been doing with that. But what it's interesting about this graph is that we surveyed 1,500 people among others, but in this case, we looked at 1,500 people that were tested at the beginning of the pandemic. And they answered questions about smell and taste and their status. And all of them had smell and taste loss at the beginning of the pandemic. And we surveyed them approximately 2 months after, they responded the first time to the survey. And we found out that 40% of them still had smell and taste loss, whereas approximately 20% at time point 2, they had smell loss only. And a very minor, a fraction of this population, 3.5% approximately, had the taste loss only. But this is telling us that a significant amount of people that started with smell and taste loss in COVID-19, at least after 2 months, they're still presenting smell and taste disorders or a combination of both. And if we, start putting these numbers into the whole pandemic and having approaching this question from a worldwide perspective, we see that approximately 10 million people worldwide have new smell and taste disorders. And we're not talking about a small percentage of the population. We're really talking about millions of people worldwide for whom their lives has been changed when it comes to the way they, they experience food, they experience a relationship with others, and they can enjoy the world. So it's a pretty significant hit to worldwide well-being. And so it becomes really relevant then to understand how we can use the smell and taste and leverage these senses to both detect disease, like in the case of COVID-19, and monitor disease. And I'm going to be talking today primarily about COVID-19 and focus, but just know that, as I mentioned before, smell and taste and health, it's a topic that is much more wider than that. And so what was the approach that I, with other colleagues, decided to, to use to actually study smell and taste in COVID-19? And first of all, we felt the need to innovate. This pandemic was something that we haven't seen, most of us haven't seen in our lifetime. And we actually had to find new ways to test people into the lab with all the restrictions that were brought to us by this pandemic. So we cannot really share tools, we cannot really bring people into the lab, but we can only test people that have mild symptoms and not those who are severely ill and they end up being in ICUs. So we had to create new tools to just ask the questions and describe what the phenomenon is. And we needed to do that on a worldwide scale because the pandemic, as the word says in and of itself, it's not constrained by national, in a national territory or by the reach that a lab can have, but it was really a worldwide phenomenon. And so we had to really use our research tool at the service of communities, very different communities that may have different preferences on how they can respond and engage with science. And why do we want to do that? Why do we want to put all of this effort? Well, partly because we really want to understand what are the mechanisms of smell and taste for COVID-19, but also because this can provide a huge insights on the basic science of smell and taste itself. And this as a downstream effect and actually help us improve our applications. And finally, I really think that this vicious cycle that we want to build really needs to include communication. And why do we want to include communication? Because we need to keep people alerted about their chemical senses and their relationship with health, because oftentimes, as most of us may have noticed, like over the years prior to COVID-19, people are not really attuned to their smell abilities or taste abilities per se. A lot of people think that smell, it's, a fifth sense, to use the name of one of the charities that works with people with smell loss. I used to call it the Cinderella sense. So people do not really think it's an important one that we need to pay attention to. Yet, if we think with the eyes of the pandemic, then we understand that perhaps having tools and understanding how to leverage smell for COVID-19 would have actually perhaps given a different, way to the spread of this disorder. And I want to also point out that communication doesn't stop with the pandemic. So there has been a lot of attention to smell and taste. If we think just that the New York Times really doubled the number of articles that they run on smell and taste during the pandemic as compared to a similar period prior to that. But we need to keep the general public and the mainstream attention on these senses. And so to do that, we instituted the World Taste and Smell Day, which happens on September 14th, which is a day in which we want to celebrate smell and taste. And I'm going to make a point of adding the link later on in the chat where we can share the information on the Exploratorium. We created basically with all the people that wanted to connect and contribute to this day, we created an art exhibition, a virtual art exhibition about everything that people cherish about the senses to share for others to see. And you're welcome to contribute and join in if interested. I also want to point out that, the cycle starts again with innovation. And by innovation here, I mean not only innovating at the research level, but also in application. And so I hope that all of the information that I'm going to share with you this afternoon could actually be helpful for the applications that you guys are actively working on. And so we need to find ways to really implement this new and to serve this newly created population by COVID-19 of 10 million people that may need different products or different ways of appreciating products that they had consistently been using in the past. So where did we start? And so I will present tonight data that come from 3 different tools, and 2 of them come from the GCCR, and 1 comes from a partnership between Temple University and the Monell Chemical Senses Center. So let me start with GCCR. I've mentioned this a few times already, and I kind of want to be clear about what we created here. So GCCR stands for the Global Consortium for Chemosensory Research, and it's a group of people, of chemosensory enthusiasts, primarily scientists, but also clinicians, patient advocates, people in the industry, journalists, science communicators, artists, and everybody who find a reason to be connected with the senses. We are approximately to this day 681 across the 65 countries. And if you want to know more about us, or if you want to join us, so you can actually type in the website and you can check us out. But the way we were born, it's particularly interesting. So during the pandemic, it's March 2020, it's mid-March 2020, as chemosensory scientists, we started receiving messages and DMs on Twitter and on different social medias and in our email boxes, basically just saying, hey, I lost my sense of smell, I got COVID, what happens here? What can I do? Is it gonna come back? What am I supposed to do with this? And so many people actually at that point in time started to realize that what it really meant to lose smell and taste. And as a group of scientists that started jumping on a huge email lists, with hundreds of people, we said, well, we've got to do something. And there's no point in us running very small surveys or trying to get to patients everybody on their own and publish tiny studies. Why don't we all get together, join forces, look at this problem from all the perspectives that we can have on smell and taste, and try to produce some crowdsourced research that can reach globally? And that's exactly what we did. And so what we did in particular as a first effort was to create a survey. And we did that because, again, it was impossible at the time to have people in the lab, and we didn't want to tax, hospitals with adding additional questions. Plus, March 2020, we still had no idea that smell and taste was a symptoms that people should be looking at. The CDC actually took a little more time to include smell and taste in the list, and this happened in April, and some other like worldwide, national healthcare systems like the UK one took even longer to do that. But so what did we put into the survey? So remember, we're chemosensory scientists, so we started seeing like people asking general questions like lumping together smell and taste. Do you have problems with smell, taste? Check this box, and that's kind of it. We wanted to be way more thorough. First of all, we wanted to test like at least 3 chemosensory modalities: smell, taste, but also chemical irritation or chemesthesis. So we started asking questions about the ability of people of experiencing like spicy or cooling type of foods. Then we really wanted to focus on a qualitative description of the experience, as well as trying to quantify the change and how big was the smell loss or the taste loss that was like paired with COVID-19. And then we set out our questions to try to get at the mechanisms behind what was happening in COVID-19. And so, is this a sensory neural disorder? Is this a conductive disorders? We actually imagine people having like a stuffy noses, and of course people are not going to smell. And when your nose is going to be clear, then the smell, in a vast majority of the times is going to come back. Spoiler alert, we were quite wrong about that. Other than that, we wanted to really look at which is the best. If we have a shot at having a large group of people asking about smell and taste for health purposes, what is the best way to ask that question? And then also, it's March. So again, the flu in the Northern Hemisphere, it's kind of far away, but we were talking with our colleagues like in the Southern Hemispheres, and they were saying, well, we kind of also have the flu. What are we doing about it? And we were thinking about November, October 2020, there's going to be a flu season starting. So how can we discriminate COVID and the flu? And are the chemical senses a good way to discriminate between these two groups? And we were really engaging with emergency departments and things like that, trying to understand whether they would be interested in having this information. And so, long story short, insights basically got into 2 surveys. One is called the core survey, and the other one is called the smell and taste, the self-check, which is very similar to the survey, but other than just asking questions and having people self-report about their experience, we also ask people to go into their kitchen cabinets, into the bathroom, like getting soaps and spices, and actually try out smell, tastes, and chemostatic stimuli, so that they could give us an idea of what their experience right then in the moment was, and not just imagining or remembering what their experience was. With these tools, we basically we translated them in 35 languages. We reached out to more than 60 countries, and we had more than 60,000 people taking our survey. So we felt we were very successful in reaching out and having a global look at it. And the results, the 2 main papers that came out already and are published from this effort are 2, and you can see here from the blue part, like those are all the names of the authors that participated in each of this paper, and you can see that it's kind of a massive effort. What did we learn from that effort? So first, the first paper, we focused, this was April. We started data collection April 7th, we stopped 10 days later. So it's really at the very beginning of the pandemic of 2020. And we had 4 questions. So we wanted to quantify what it means to have smell loss in a group of people with COVID-19. And very early in the pandemic, if you remember, it was kind of hard to get tested. So we included both people who had a PCR test result, but also people that were diagnosed by a clinician. And as you can see from these graphs, which are quite impressive, there's a complete drop on the top left graph. In purple, you can see a complete smell loss, minus 80 points. People recalled having a good sense of smell before they got sick, and during the disease, basically their sense of smell was particularly gone, were pretty much gone. Severe taste loss is also present, like with a change of 70 points during the disease as compared to before. And then we have also more variable chemostatic loss, though there are people that still do significantly lose their sense of smell. And this reduction is between like 40 and 50 points. In pink on the bottom left corner, you can see nasal blockage. And so what we learned by looking at these very early people with COVID-19 is that like, it's not really a conductive disorder. It's not that the nose is stuck, but anecdotally, people really kept telling us that the majority of them had this very clear nose. They were drinking their coffee. And at a certain point, like, 3 sips in their coffee that they could totally smell at the beginning of their breakfast, they couldn't smell anything anymore. And so that, pointed to a sensory neural type of mechanism. Then we set out to ask questions with respect to flu. So rather than considering people like within themselves at the beginning and during the disease, what happens when we compare two groups of people? Some that have COVID-19 plus, which is like they have a PCR positive test result, and those are all of the graphs on the left. And then we have COVID-19 minus people that got tested but didn't receive a positive result. And what we learn is that smell loss, taste loss, and kinesthesis loss are much greater in people with COVID-19 as compared to people that show respiratory symptoms that are similar to COVID-19, but they do not qualify for the disease. So that's pretty interesting. And it really, brings up the idea that actually smell can help us distinguish between the flu, but how best can we do that? And so we asked, like in this long surveys, it was like more than 40 questions. So we asked the same question in different ways to kind of look at the consistency of how participants responded. And the best way to discriminate people that had COVID-19 versus people that didn't have COVID-19 but showed the same respiratory symptoms was asking, like, how is your smell from 0 to 100? How is your smell during the disease? And you can see that that alone has the 70% ability to discriminate between these two groups, which is way better than the triad, the CDC triad. So fever, cough, and respiratory distress, which were the 3 symptoms that the CDC really used to identify COVID-19 in the beginning. So we are doing a much better job, like looking at smell if we want to discriminate between COVID-19 and the flu. And we were not the only ones like getting to this conclusion, but over the time, we have multiple studies in different samples asking different questions to really get to the same conclusion. But then we know that, like, if you talk to a lot of chemosensory scientists, then we know that self-reports are tricky. Like, can we really trust what people tell us? Like, maybe sometimes we can, but are we really sure that if we give people like a direct test, we ask people to smell something or to taste something, they wouldn't actually change their response and say something different? And so we actually added, like in the smell and taste check, we asked the people to take 4 smells of their choice, like from a list, identify 4 tastes, and we give people examples on how to do that, and then pick one oral kinesthesis topic, which is, wasabi or something spicy in general. And then we ask them, before we ask them, how do you think your sense of smell is, like now during the disease, before the disease, and then just tell me, how do you perceive the intensity of this different stimuli? And we looked at correlations, like we really wanted to see whether people felt, the self-reported things that they would actually truthfully report when they had like a chemosensory item in front of them. In blue, you see information about smell, in orange about taste, and in green about kinesthesis. And you can see that on the y-axis, what we have is like, can you smell, what's the intensity of the item that you smelled? And on the x-axis, you will see what is today's self-report of your smell, taste, or kinesthetic experience. And from the blue line in the middle of the graph, you can see that they're all kind of steep and directed to, from bottom left to top right, indicated a positive correlation. And this really tells us that whether they had COVID-19 minus or plus, so they had COVID-19 or the flu, people are really quite good at understanding, at reporting what is their self-experience, what by remembering about it or by looking at the, by rating the intensity of an item altogether. And this is particularly true when people have like a significant smell loss. So people are particularly accurate in reporting their experience when the change is stark, like in the case of COVID-19, where we have an 80-point change in their ability to perceive smells and taste. And so, okay, all of this is research, but how can we help people actually deal with this information, knowing that the majority of people are not really comfortable about talking and reporting about smell and taste? And so we kind of gathered like the knowledge that, you know, healthcare providers already apply. For instance, like it's very easy for a healthcare provider to use a pain scale from 0 to 10. What's your pain level here today? And we adapted this in olfactory terms, and we created what is called the odor 19 scale based on the data that I just presented to you. And so we made this suggestion by looking at this like 9,000 people that were part of the GCR database, and then we looked into the second study. We wanted really to see what's the risk of having COVID-19 based on the response to a scale from 0 to 10. And what we found was that if people respond 0 to 2, more or less, so a significant smell loss, they have 4 to 10, like a increased fold in chances of having COVID-19 as compared to when they respond 4 to 10. 3, it's kind of moderate risk of COVID-19. There is an increased risk, but not significantly higher. But so the advice that we would give healthcare provider is ask this question, like right now, how is your sense of smell from 0 to 10? And then if the response is below 3, then they would really need to go get tested for COVID-19. And this is useful at the individual level, right? Like we know if one person has COVID-19, but can we actually gather information on groups of people just by looking at what, self-reports of smell and taste? And the answer is yes to that. And we ran the study by looking at the data from the GCR database and merging it with publicly available data in France. And we see that people in France self-reported smell and taste changes, and that the number of those self-reports was closely associated with the hospital overload. So how many ICU were actually getting overloaded. And if we use the information of self-reports as compared to the information that a governmental index in France was using based on healthcare measures, what we see is that by looking at the spread of smell and taste disorders in the population, we could actually predate by 10 days the spread of the infection of COVID-19, and the governmental French index could only do so for 3 days prior to the ICU being overloaded. And so we just don't have in our culture to actually look at smell and taste as information that can be used for a public relevance perspective, but this information has the potential of doing so. And going back to the idea of self-reports and direct measures, what we can see is that the direct measures are actually better, especially in cases that are a little more, not as clear-cut to understand who has COVID-19 and who hasn't. And actually, they buy us 20% more, the ability of detecting 20% more people. And so that's where the Sentinel rapid smell test comes up. And I cannot see the room, but I saw somebody before it, like kind of, waving a little card of Sentinel test. And so I'm assuming that all of you would have that. And so that's kind of the time where we're preparing to use it. Why did we have to come up with a new smell test though? Well, first of all, we wanted a smell that was COVID-proof in a way. And so we wanted to apply it in the clinic, in the workplace, at home for people monitoring. And we wanted to really solve a bunch of scientific and practical questions. So we want a smell test that is rapid. It has to be less than 2 minutes. People are not going to queue for hours to answer our smell test. We do want people to not to have tools, like a lot of smell tests require like a scratch and sniff type of technology. So you need a pencil or a coin to sniff. And that would be in a COVID environment, a potentially, harmful, contagion point. We do not want odors to be left over in the environment, scratch and sniff, like keep giving out their odor even after the test has been taken. And we need to have, tests that are not only testing odor identification, as the majority of standardized tests do, that are fast, because we may have incur on cultural issues. And so how can we create a test that actually has multiple odor functions tested? It's rapid and uses a technology that, it's allows not to be more functional in COVID times. And so this is the previous version of the Sentinel card. You have the newer version. You can see that there is a QR code. That's the entry point to a series of questions. But now I'm going to walk you through, rather than having you go to the electronic survey paired with the card, and I'm going to walk you through like completing the Sentinel test. And so the first instruction that we give participants is to lift one at a time each of the panels of the odor labels that you have. So open panel A and smell it, then close it, open panel B and smell it, and then close it back, and then open panel C and smell it, and then close it back. And so my first question to you on the first subtest of Sentinel is, where is the odor? Like, you have 3 patches, where is the odor? Or even better, where is the different odor? Once you have identified that, we want to ask, how strong is the odor? So from 0 to 100, can you put a number to the intensity of the odor that you perceive? And then as a third point, the electronic survey would give you 4 options, like visual and verbal labels, and it's going to ask, what is the odor smell like? And the odors that you're having in the room are different. So, you know, you might all be right if you're saying something very different from each other. And we can talk about this later. But now let me tell you how we actually first validated in a small number of people Sentinel. So first of all, Sentinel, as it is like as easy and portable as you have seen, can be mailed. And we mailed it to like a group of people between 18 and 65 that were resident in the United States. And we were able to test like 154 people with normosmia, 111 people with anosmia that had known smell loss, and 42 people that had other types of smell disorders, and so hyposmia or qualitative smell disorders. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And our goal was to have Sentinel to be, you know, faster, look at more, you know, odor functions, but be as accurate as other standardized tests. And to verify that, we first of all had, like, we wanted our models to distinguish, like, with high accuracy between anosmic people and normosmic people. And as you can see, all of the subtests are doing pretty a good job, but the overall score, which is the one in pink, really allows us to say that in 95% of cases, we're really good at discriminating who is anosmic and who is normosmic. And this is similar to what we're doing with the NIH odor identification, the NIH toolbox odor identification test, which is like a gold standard measure, and it's only focusing on odor identification. So here you can see that the majority of people, 97% of people, are actually passing the complete test, or we're just looking at one of the items that was relevant to Sentinel. So Sentinel is fast, it's pretty good, or as good as other standardized tests. It costs less, and it's way faster to administer, and it's way more flexible. So we think that we have a tool that actually can help, you know, be deployed at the population level. And so what are we also doing? Like, so far I have presented like surveys and direct tests like Sentinel to detect disease. So our main focus was, can we actually detect like people with COVID-19, or can we detect people that have a significant smell loss? But we know, especially by looking at people with COVID-19 over time, that we need to monitor their disease, and their ability to smell really changes. And so what can we do? What do we know about smell loss after COVID-19 and the recovery process? And if we look at the early recovery period, so in the first 40 days, what we see is that when we compare people with COVID-19 and people with a regular cold or flu, we can see that we have the same type of groups. Some people do not lose their sense of smell. It's about 8-9% in COVID-19, whereas it's 30% in people that have, you know, the cold or the flu. A vast majority of people have persistent smell loss, 50% that hasn't recovered yet, and approximately 40% of people loses their sense of smell, but within 40 days recovers it. And it's interesting to see how this recovery kind of changes over time. But, you know, 40 days, it's kind of the beginning. And so what happens if we look like at up to more than 90 days, like if we look at 3 months of schedule? And here we looked at the Italian subsample of the GCCR survey, and we really tested this sample since Italians were one of the first hit by the pandemic. They allowed us to actually look at, you know, at people over time better, and we looked at paths from chemosensory loss to recovery. So what we see is that we have 3 clusters of chemosensory loss, and interestingly, chemostasis is what discriminated these people. So in 30% of people have substantial smell, taste, and chemostasis loss. 53% of people show moderate smell and taste loss and preserved chemostasis. And in 30% of cases, we have substantial smell and taste loss, but preserved chemostasis. And we see that if we split the sample between people that have substantially recovered or are still recovering, what we see is that chemostasis is more frequently associated with substantial recovery. And that suggests that the non-involvement of the trigeminal system in particular can be a protective factor. Other protective factors are the fact that people are younger, like they tend to recover more quickly, and who reported greater initial loss also seems to recover pretty quickly. And now just a quick primer of what happens after, because up until now, I only talked about smell loss. And we were really focused on this complete anosmia that we have characterized in the beginning, these people that, one day to another completely lost their sense of smell. But it's way more complicated than that when we look at the recovery period. And so this is a graph that I, took back from my PhD thesis of, who would have imagined that, almost a decade later, I could actually put it in a presentation again. But this is a way to discriminate between quantitative and qualitative smell disorders. And as you can see, we can have like the presence of the odor, the awareness of the odor, and how distorted is the perception. And anosmic people, as you may know, they have completely lost their sense of smell. Hyposmic, the odor is present, but they perceive it as less intense. And dysosmia or parosmia is what is really interesting. And we know that this is like a known phenomenon from, other types of smell disorders, including like other types of post-viral smell loss, but it's really hitting hard to people with COVID-19. And to give you an idea of what that means, I'm just going to put up like a comic that Chrissy Kelly, who is the founder of Absent, which is a charity working with people with smell and taste loss, and a person who lost the sense of smell herself and was parosmic. She put together like this comic about the little shop of parosmia horrors, based it on her own experience and talking about like tens of thousands of people in her Facebook groups due to COVID-19. And so as you can see, like coffee is one of the horrible trigger, as it is also, being reported in this like research that has been preprinted by Pellegrino and colleague. Onions, garlic are very triggering foods, but also perfumes and peanuts and, fried stuff. And there's chemical odors that are really triggering to people. And so let's imagine having, brushing our teeth and really like perceiving this terrible smell in front of us, like every single day. It's a very triggering situation. And I know this like is the first meeting before Halloween, so allowing to make like, a little reference to that when I talk about phantosmia, or the presence of oftentimes a burning smell that actually is not without like any presence of an odor source that can remind about that burning smell. So as you can see, like the people, especially people with COVID-19, have some sorts of, there is an increased like incidence of the presence of these qualitative disorders, dysosmia or parosmia and phantosmia. And when we dig a little deeper into that, the Pellegrino and colleagues showed that in many participants, parosmia and phantosmia coexist. And parosmia is particularly bad in younger people, like ages like 21 to 40, whereas phantosmia really peaks in middle age. And these people tend to be particularly affected 3 months to 12 months after the beginning of their smell disorders, and females tend to be more suffering of parosmia as compared to others. So again, once again, we're looking at information that comes from self-reports. Even these graphs from Pellegrino et al. We're really dependent on asking people questions. But what do we do? Like, can we use direct studies to actually look at the differences between these quantitative and qualitative smell groups. And that's what we did with Sentinel. And again, we asked the question that I asked before, that you have like perhaps tried yourself before. And we also added a little part, which was a hedonic subtest. How pleasant is the odor? And then please imagine the smell of vomit and how pleasant is that? And by looking at the differential rating between the odor that was smelled and the imagined vomit, we can come up with a hedonic score. And on the right side, you can see that by using that hedonic score, we're actually pretty good at differentiating between quantitative and qualitative smell loss. So when it comes to parosmia. So Sentinel can actually be used to discriminate between all these smells groups. And if we look at the chemosensory distortion and its downstream consequences, I want to point out that, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have like these changes are pervasive, like people start thinking, oh, being very self-conscious about like their alcohol in their breath, or can they detect fire or a gas leak? And even they're more anxious about their own cleanliness, that they want to cook less because they don't enjoy food and things of that sort. So quite pervasive. And I just want to end by focusing on, again, on the data that I presented in the beginning from the GCCR with people with smell and taste loss. And I want to read a few quotes that, you know, it really, I think it's very stark to use the words of patients to actually describe these conditions. And many have written in our surveys, I have absolutely no sense of smell due to COVID. I tried everything I know. Normally I would smell strongly. This caused me to have very low mood, and I don't see even the point in eating. I may as well eat cardboard because my taste was undetectable. Each bite is a disappointment. I've lost 13 pounds since the beginning. Or this is very depressing. It may cause weight gain since I'm not fulfilled after eating. So this gives us, you know, a lot of insight of what can we do to try to actually improve, you know, our applications of products for people that are experiencing this varied type of smell, quantitative and qualitative smell dysfunctions. And I'm at the end of my talk. I really want to acknowledge, you know, the two big teams that allowed this research to come to life, the GCCR on the left with the leadership team and the Sentinel team on the right with Pam Dalton, who's, you know, my co-awardee of a Big NIH grant. And I want to thank you, all of you, for the attention. And here I leave 2 links to relevant information about the tools that have been used in this presentation. And I'm really happy to take any question if you have any. Thank you so much. Oops.
Oh, hello.
Yes.
I had a question. You know, as many of us here are in the flavor industry, it's been a big
Yes.
concern of mine personally about losing my taste and smell, just because it would affect my livelihood. And without getting into a debate over vaccines, like if they're good or bad, I was curious if the vaccines have shown some, like adding a lot of protection against the loss of taste and smell.
So we do not have that, you know, that reviewed evidence at the moment. There, you know, we don't have good evidence about it. We only have anecdotes, and the anecdotes are a little bit confounded by timeline. So it seems that some people lost their sense of smell after getting the second dose of the vaccine, but within the 2 weeks of receiving the second dose. So when it's not like the vaccine is not fully effective. So we cannot necessarily say at this point whether vaccines are protective or not of smell and taste. But what I didn't say perhaps is that the majority of people that lose their sense of smell, like due to COVID-19, in 85% of cases would actually regain their ability to smell and taste within 2 months. And there is that 10% or 10-15% that actually takes way longer. And we're trying to, you know, look at what longer means, since kind of the pandemic is the limit. And so right now, some people have lost their sense of smell for 1.5 years, and this would be in line with some other like post-viral illnesses that we've seen before. But the jury is still out on that. Vaccines, like, we hope to actually get to study that with, you know, bigger samples pretty soon.
I want to thank Valentino for presenting. This is really good. I actually want to give you guys a heads up. She's actually speaking in France today. So it's actually almost what, 10 o'clock right now, Valentina?
10:30, but it's
10:30.
fine.
So, just definitely, oh, hold on. We have a question on the screen real fast. Can you see that?
Yes.
On the chat.
Is there any therapeutic methods for regaining the senses? This is a great question. And so it depends what therapeutic means. So the only recommended like intervention for smell loss, and particularly for post-viral smell loss like COVID-19, is olfactory training. So that has the best benefit to risk ratio. The use of corticosteroids or other drugs has not, can work on some people, but has not been recommended as a general study. So it seems at this point that, we can stimulate through olfactory training, like a regeneration of the olfactory system. And that definitely works based on prior research in 30% of people. And we're trying to figure out how to improve the training itself and how to improve, how to understand for whom exactly this type of training can work. And hopefully, all of the attention that COVID-19 is, putting on the chemical senses is stimulating funding that can help perhaps like getting more at, more solution-based and therapeutic-based interventions for these people.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it feels a little weird, like I'm in a vacuum, so and I don't see you guys, I don't see the audience, so I'm happy to take any other questions or really to let you continue with this great program.
No, I think that answers all the questions. No, I really appreciate you speaking on behalf of this. I feel very, I think this topic hits a lot of people home, and I think for us, this is very educational, and I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. So thank you again so much for presenting.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer over email, but happy continuation.
Thank you.
Okay, so
So we're going to continue on with our next presenter. Can everyone hear me? Can you not hear me in the back? Can everyone hear me now? Okay, perfect. Sorry. So our next speaker is Marcia. She has been at Mintel since 2000. She started in 2009. She started the first Mintel food and drinks platform that she helped create. Her major focus has been on confectionery and snacks with a concentration in the global chocolate industry. While with US reports, Marcia has authorized the first premium chocolate report. Since then, she has written on all aspects of confectionery industry. She also has a deep understanding of consumer demographic and trends. She holds a PhD from Cornell University. And please welcome our next speaker.
Thank you. I don't know, can everyone hear me? I'm coming out as Justin, so I guess I'm impersonating Justin.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I just need to know if you can see my screen. I hope so.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. Now you can go and sit and relax. Thank you for inviting me to this. This is a wonderful venue, and it's very strange to be speaking to you from my basement. Greetings from upstate New York, where it is fall, and I'm not yet traveling very much. So I'm speaking to you remotely. I'm hoping one day I will get to come back to Chicago, where Mintel is based in the United States, see my colleagues, and actually speak with you in person. I'm going to be talking about something a little lighter than our last speaker. Our last speaker was fantastic. I loved hearing about what's happening to us because of COVID. I've been looking at it not as scientifically, but more consumer-wise and emotionally. And that's why I thought I would talk to you about consumers looking for comfort in these very challenging times. So we know that stress and candy go together, stress and chocolate go together really well. So in the middle of the pandemic, where do you go for stress and comfort? We went to candy. And where are we going to continue to go as things improve? We're going to stay with candy. So there's a lot in the market we should understand and have a look at. Okay, let me just move myself around here. Predicting the future. Well, when I was contacted to give this talk, I was asked if I could talk to the future. And boy, after the pandemic, I'll never predict the future again, because who thought we'd end up the way we are now? We never thought we'd have a pandemic. We never thought we would have a continuing pandemic and cycles of the pandemic. And consumers continue to be remarkably somewhat optimistic. We did a survey and we asked how consumers thought things were going to turn out. And consumers are pretty split. Half of consumers think that their lives are going to return to normal post-pandemic. And they think they're returning to it now. But half think that they're not going to go back to the way they were before the pandemic. Their lives are just not going to be the same. What we have noticed, though, is that regardless of where we are in this pandemic cycle, confectionery has really stepped up to make a big difference in the way we live our lives. It provides a range of solutions from comfort and ritual to nostalgia and reward. That's why we're eating so much candy. In troubled times, consumers turn to confectionery, and here's why. We have been following, as you were told, I've been following the confectionery industry more like 30 years now. In troubled times, where do people go? They go to confectionery. And why do they do that? They go for comfort. One thing we've learned about the pandemic and the isolation that it brought us is that people were scared. People were seeking comfort in familiar foods. Anyone who read the newspaper during the pandemic knows that there was suddenly a run on things like Kraft macaroni and cheese, peanut butter and jelly. All those things we grew up depending on reminding us of better times, we turned to. One of them was candy. Comfort foods have been important since this all started. People were stockpiling macaroni and cheese, along beside the toilet paper, of course. Dependable confectionery products have a well-established track record as comfort food. You'll see there are candies I'm going to point to that have been on the market for more than 100 years that are still going strong. There's also the nostalgia value of candy. For many consumers, the present is a pretty scary place. The future is unknown. Where do we go? We go to the past. We go there for solace and for a reminder of what used to be and maybe will be again. So this reliance on nostalgia, we see this trend all the way across the food industry, that people are looking for nostalgia right now. We really want kind of a sense that we can go back again somehow and remember good things. Remember how good it was in the past. But also, and this is a lot to do with flavor chemists, we want to have fun with our candy. We are still looking for familiar brands, but we're also looking for something fun. We are bored out of our trees. Social distancing, it's so boring. I've heard people actually say, I'm so over the pandemic. I'm just going to go out and enjoy myself. What is really appealing to people right now are new textures, flavors, and colors of candy. but the same candy done up different, a new flavor, a new color, a new combination of flavors, something that they can do that's different, something that is outside of what they have been doing for the past almost 2 years. And what candy provides is a sense of relaxation. You know how strongly sweets are associated with relaxation. Chocolate and relaxation, strong connection. And although new launches promote the addition of relaxation ingredients, we all know about CBD and candy and things like that. There is also an opportunity to remind people that relaxation can come from something just old and familiar and cuddly, like their favorite chocolate bar. Rituals have also become a really important place for candy. Rituals that contribute to mental wellness. So think about it this way. You take a coffee break, a tea break. Everyone is so concerned about our mental wellness that people are really doing as much as they can to ritualize events. Consumers identify sweets with these ritual occasions, and everything from a familiar Hershey bar to a hot chocolate. These all bring up ideas of ritual. And then finally, and you guys probably know this really well, everybody knows this, there is rewards that come with candy or chocolate. Many consumers reward themselves with sweets. We've done survey after survey, and we ask, why do you eat chocolate? Why do you eat candy? We've done these surveys for 20 years, and one of the answers is always as a reward. If I get through this task, I'll give myself a chocolate. If I get through this whatever, I will give myself a candy. So reward and candy are very closely linked. So looking for comfort means that people lean on confectionery. We know that 68% of American consumers say that their favorite food or drink reminds them of a happier time ahead, happier time in the past. We know that people stockpiled during the pandemic. We've been seeing the run on toilet paper. We've been seeing the run on paper towel now as the supply chain is a bit disrupted. A bit is a euphemism for terribly disrupted. We know that stockpiling was a major trend, and people wanted to be not just equipped with toilet paper and paper towels and disinfectants and everything else that was trendy, but they wanted to be equipped with candy, baked goods, snacks. What happened was became kind of like the quartermasters of our own house. We all wanted to make sure we were well stocked with the essentials we needed to hunker down during COVID-19. One of those hunker downable products was chocolate and candy. A third of consumers agree that food was their source of comfort during the pandemic, which ties in really well to the speaker before, because if you can't see, taste, and smell those familiar foods, where do you go? What do you do? It's really an interesting thought. And even 1 year after the pandemic, we just did this survey, more than half of consumers are still making larger stock up grocery purchases. So we are comforting ourselves with confectionery, and we are making sure that we have confectionery on hand, regardless of what happens next. So I went and looked, and I know this is a flavor conference, and I know I'm talking about flavor to flavor chemists. I went to look at flavors and candy and chocolate to see what people were doing in the categories. That is so interesting. One of the things I thought was really interesting is that Skittles created a crisis and solved it all in one go. They took a popular flavor, they took it away, they gave it back. It was a way of continuing to sell the product based on flavor. What I'm talking about is the fact that in the olden days, when Skittles was first launched, the green candy in the Skittles was green apple. Does everyone remember that? It was green apple Skittles. And then all of a sudden, last year, the year before, they announced, we're going to change that to lime. We'll get rid of the green apple. No, I'm sorry, I've got it backwards. It was lime originally. They made it green apple. And everyone said, I don't like the green apple, bring back the lime. So that was the big problem. They took out a popular flavor, lime. They turned it to green apple. And everyone said, we want our lime back. So rather than give them the lime back, what Skittles did was they gave them a whole bag of lime Skittles. You want your lime back? Here it is. Lime Skittles, a whole bag of it. And finally, the way it's all settled out in the great Skittles lime green apple war is that Skittles have gone back to lime in the package of Skittles. So there's one flavor that has gone in, out, and back in again. Starburst did it differently. Starburst innovated around its core brand with a flavor change by making 2 flavors in one. Suddenly duos became very popular. And you'll see this across a bunch of categories where they've taken 2 of their most popular flavors and put them into one candy. So Starburst Duos launched last year, 2019, I should say, was 2 flavors in one. So it was your favorite Starburst flavor and your other favorite Starburst flavor all together. But then there are some flavors that are so identified with a product that they didn't really have to change. Swedish fish. Swedish fish, the most popular and best-selling type of Swedish fish are red Swedish fish. These have been popular for decades. They're still popular. Everyone loves red Swedish fish because whatever that red flavor is, people love it. We also see chocolate doing some clever things that with flavor and color to try to keep consumers interested without making huge changes. Anyone who's bought their Halloween candy, and I sure hope you've bought all your Halloween candy now because apparently it's getting scarce on the shelves. Reese's have their peanut butter cups with a green hue for Halloween. They're Franken cups. They haven't changed the flavor. They haven't changed anything except they've made some of that chocolate green. M&M's also innovated around color. They have various colors of M&M's. And at the 4th of July, their Independence Day M&M's were just red and blue. Kit Kat is one to watch. And if you are a Kit Kat addict like I am, you'll watch it in Japan because that's where the biggest changes happen. Kit Kat has been innovating around flavors in confection in their bars for years. One of them here is their key lime bar. It's not a chocolate bar anymore. It's a key lime pie bar. So taking the old and familiar or the old and reliable and making it different keeps consumers interested. Oops, did I just go the wrong way? Let me just make sure. No, sorry. Okay, so nostalgia. We talked about nostalgia before, and I keep turning back to nostalgia because it's one thing that is really keeping things going in the confectionery industry. And I know you're all working hard on developing new flavors. One thing to remember is that 63% of chocolate eaters agree that they like the same type of chocolate now that they did when they were kids. Sorry, something came across my screen and disrupted me. Excuse me. 63%, so that's 2/3 of chocolate eaters in the United States say that they like the same brand that they did when they were kids. Okay, that doesn't mean much if you're a Gen Zer because you were just a kid last week. But if you're a baby boomer, and you're still eating the same brand as you did when you were a kid, it shows how long brands can last and flavors can last and styles and tastes and textures can last. Just think about it. Hershey's been on the market since 1900. Cadbury Dairy Milk, which the original UK Cadbury Dairy Milk, not the US one, the UK Cadbury Dairy Milk has been in the United States, in the UK since 1905. But if you want to talk about a brand that hasn't made any change at all, not a flavor change, not a packaging change, not any major change for more than 100 years, I have to point you to Tootsie Rolls. Nostalgia is so strong in challenging time that Tootsie Rolls, which has been on the market for more than a century, was one of the top 10 sellers over the last year because it reminds us all of when we were young. And boy, during the past year, we really wanted to know that there was something we could latch on to. The brand has been on the market since 1896. I got really into studying Tootsie Rolls for some reason. The slogan, the logo, the packaging have remained pretty much unchanged for decades. And the pandemic has really contributed to its popularity because consumers are looking for reliable comforts and reliable brands. You're fearful, you're locked down, you're confused, you're stuck, you're bored. You want to know what you're getting, and what you were getting was Tootsie Rolls. In fact, 26%, so a quarter of US consumers agree that they have turned to food or drink for comfort more often during the pandemic. And that also explains the popularity of Tootsie Rolls. Tootsie Rolls has a storied past. It wasn't just that it popped up. It was a really big crowd pleaser during the 2 world wars. And for those who like to have celebrity status, there's Frank Sinatra. He was one of the earliest spokesmodels for the brand. He insisted that Tootsie Rolls be in his dressing room, for you Frank Sinatra fans out there. And Tootsie Rolls has not changed its packaging much, but it has changed its packaging cleverly. It's kept up with social trends. So it uses social media now. It proudly announced that it started using social media, and it uses social media. It has a Facebook page. It has a Instagram page, things like that. And you can see how it got into, for example, National Hispanic Month and National Hispanics Heritage Month. It changed its wrapper for that. So it's clever enough to know to keep top of mind. And for the most part, it's the fact that it has lasted so long. Don't just forget that pun. That is, that it just keeps on going and comforting people even now. So when looking for comfort and nostalgia, we're also looking for the new and the different. This is where you guys really come in, because only 36% of consumers say that most things in their lives are back to the way they were, but they're ready for something new. In the US, for example, 77% of consumers agree that they love trying new experiences. They want something new. 3/4 of us are looking for fun. We need to have some fun. This has been a really unfun time. So even with the challenges during the pandemic, consumers are looking for the new and the different. That leaves confectionery with tons of room to maneuver. There's a chance to launch all sorts of new flavors, textures, take the old reliables, turn them on their head, but also bring in something new, because people are hungry for the new, the fun, plus the old and the reliable. There's room for both. So familiar brands have been working on this. Starburst, everyone, I mean, I assume that a lot of you know the Starburst brand, the chewy candy Starburst that's been around for 20, 30 years. They came out with gummies. They changed their texture from a chewy to a gummy. Now, for flavor scientists, perhaps that doesn't seem to be a huge step. For consumers, that's a huge step. It's a complete textural change. The texture of a gummy is so different than the texture of a chew that this caught people's attention. And this Starburst gummies has been a top seller. It really did very well. Now, Sour Patch did something else. It just changed the size of the candies. It went from Sour Patch Kids to Sour Patch Big Kids. Same flavor, different size. But one of the most fun things I think that has happened has been what Jelly Belly did. Now, if you guys have been paying attention to the news and all the advertisements, you know that we talk about food waste and how we are wasting a lot of food. We're not eating everything, and ugly produce became a focus. So we have Misfits markets and various places like that that sell this ugly produce to consumers now, saying it's still really good, it just looks really bad. Well, Jelly Belly decided to have ugly jelly beans. So it started selling its belly flops, the ones that weren't particularly quite jelly bean shaped. They basically took the idea and started selling misshapen jelly beans, just like we were buying misshapen produce. Very clever way of taking a familiar brand and extending it. New flavors, and you guys can probably know this better than I do. The new flavors have been fascinating. A company called Sugarfina, which you probably know, took its inspiration from alcoholic beverages. It came out with the first champagne gummy a few years ago. You had to wait. I had to wait 3 months before I could get my hands on that. They had to ship it to me from Sugarfina Central, but there was such a run on them, you couldn't get them. It was an alcoholic flavored beverage, chewy gummy. There's no alcohol actually in it, but the alcoholic flavor is in it. Their latest brands or their latest variations are hard seltzer varieties. So pineapple hard seltzer gummy bears. We saw a lot more spicy and spicy notes coming in, like chili peppers and tamarind in gummies, things like that. And we've seen them borrowing flavors from other categories across the confectionery category. Confectioners are borrowing from other categories. This Jelly Belly, the Jelly Belly is Krispy Kreme donut flavored Jelly Bellies. So they've taken familiar flavor from a completely different category and made it into a Jelly Belly. That happens in chocolate as well. Dove launched, okay, sorry, pumpkin pie alert. Dove launched white chocolate with pumpkin pie and graham flavored crisps. So this is a Dove. We all know the Dove candies. They've been around for quite a while. And the Dove chocolate is now white chocolate. And it's also got pumpkin pie flavor. And it's also got graham flavored crisps. So it's basically eating the chocolate pumpkin pie in one bite. Another place to look for the absolutely most crazy flavors in chocolate is a company called Antidote. Antidote has been putting out really unusual flavor. It takes the whole idea of chocolate flavors to a new level. I picked up on this one because I have never seen a sun-dried tomato chocolate bar before, but this one is anise seeds and sun-dried tomato. If you're interested in some of the potential new bizarre, I think they're a bit bizarre, flavors for chocolate, go to the Antidote website. They've got flavors for everything. Their original products were named as antidotes to what ails you. That's where the name comes. So they're very imaginative. And then back to Sugarfina, which we talked about before. Sugarfina has taken the shape of the packaging and the product to launch a salted caramel gelato chocolate. It comes in a gelato container, but that's not gelato in there. That's a chocolate in there. A gelato-inspired chocolate, salted caramel, a very popular flavor, sold in a gelato container, but it is chocolate. So just a couple of ways that we see extensions going. I like this very much. Ferrero Rocher, everybody knows Ferrero Rocher. It's been around forever. Ferrero Rocher has taken that bonbon, that round chocolate. They haven't changed the flavor, but they've flattened the whole thing into a chocolate bar. So here is the old and familiar, the Ferrero Rocher, turned into the new and different, the milk chocolate bar. So this is a way they've taken the same flavor and the same concept, a chocolate, and turned it into a different form, the bar. We're seeing a lot of this shape shifting. I call it shape shifting, where they take one popular snack or one popular product and turn it into a different shape, keeping the most important elements of it. So in this case, it's the chocolate and the hazelnut, but making it into a bar. The other one I saw that I thought was really interesting is, I don't know how many of you grew up with these chocolate oranges. These are Terry's milk chocolate oranges. These were very popular Christmas gifts when I was young. It was a solid chocolate orange, but you'd smush it down and it would break into chocolate orange segments. That is a popular candy in the UK, also in Canada, where I'm from. It was very popular. I think they're on the market here too. But they've now come back and taken that entire product and flattened it into a bar. So again, they flattened the curve of that bar into a bar. It's exactly the same. It's a milk chocolate orange bar instead of a milk chocolate orange. So the whole point of this is to demonstrate the ways in which we are taking the old and familiar and making it new and different. Because during the pandemic, we want both. We want the old and familiar to comfort us, to support us, but we want something new and different to inspire us and make us think that there's something exciting out there still. What this all means to me, and I know you've been sitting through this conference all day, and I just want you to think about a few things that you're probably exhausted. So I'm sorry I'm not there. I would be bringing chocolate with me if I were there. The confectionery industry has really helped us during the pandemic. I really think that it has stood up and really helped with emotional support and familiarity in really challenging times. And one thing we've seen all the way through is that consumers are extremely brand loyal. They support core brands for decades. The Tootsie Roll example is a great one, more than 100 years, and it's still a top seller. Their loyalty reflects a desire for security and the hope that, we might get back to something nice, something we used to have before the pandemic. On the other hand, we're still American consumers and we're always looking for the next most exciting thing, whether it's a new shape, a new texture, or a new flavor. So the way this seems to be working out right now, and this is something to keep an eye on, is that companies are taking baby steps, small steps in the confectionery category. And it's worth keeping an eye on these small steps because all of these small steps are going to bring us to a brand new product. As consumers continue to look forward to what I'm calling the next normal. I don't subscribe to the fact that we're entering a new normal. I just see this as a continuum of little next normal steps as we move to a different universe. As we move to each next normal, we want to feel inspired by what we have. We want to have new and different. And one of the ways to approach it is through flavor. Another way is through color. Another is through texture. And a combination of flavor, color, and texture in candy are the winning ways that consumers are going to stay engaged with the category. So that's me. I'll stop sharing my screen if I can manage that skill set. Yes. That's what I had to share with you this afternoon. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for presenting. I really found it actually interesting, but does anyone have any questions to ask? Can you hear me?
Are you asking? I don't hear.
Can you hear me, Marcia?
I hear you, but is there a question?
No, I just want to make sure. Does anyone have anything on the chat board that is Zoom?
I've left them all running out to buy candy right now. I can see it.
Exactly. No, I think overall it's really cool. I love the kind of Tootsie story and how it hasn't changed in over a century, which is just impressive to me. Dana, do you have a question?
No, I didn't notice that Skittles had a whole bag of lime Skittles now, so I found that to be very interesting.
Oh, it's a riot that they created a run on lime when nobody really cared until they took it away. They took it away and they gave it back. No one told them to take it away. They just created their own crisis. So great marketing.
I definitely gonna try the Starburst Duo. I haven't seen that before, so that's exciting. Marcia, thank you so much for presenting. It was really a pleasure for you to join us, and I definitely feel that I've actually learned a lot more about different areas of confectionery.
Well, thank you. And if there's any questions, everyone knows how to, the team knows how to find me. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And thank you for your time, and thank you for the invitation. It was a fascinating conference.
Now that concludes our presentations for today. I think it gives us about 15 minutes for everyone to go to the restroom before we have our next business meeting. I definitely appreciate everyone coming. I want to give you guys one heads up. I think, let me just make sure I have the correct date. November 18th, we're having a joint Zoom meeting with the British Society of Flavor Chemists. It's starting at 2 o'clock. It's going to be about AI technology. We'll be sending out the email link for everyone. So it's actually going to be our first joint meeting with the British Society of Flavor Chemists. So please, you guys can make that. We'd love to have you guys all attend. But overall, I just want to thank others. Let me just make sure this is one of the speakers. I apologize, but I just want to, I apologize for checking my phone. I just want to make sure it's not one speaker trying to chime in real fast. But no, I really appreciate everyone coming to the event today. Hopefully you guys found this enlightening, and definitely please stay for the board meeting.